I walked in the door and he said, I knew you'd come and see me. You know you're in a cult, don't you? And I said, no, I don't know I'm in a cult. I thought I was in an ashram with my guru. And he said, go home and Google cult characteristics. There's no way to get out of a cult or get out of an enslavement situation until you know that that's what situation you're in. Because I didn't know I was in a cult. So I couldn't really like get out until I understood my predicament. And that's true also for any individual. Until we understand where we are and what systems of control are operating beyond our, well, really, our current knowledge, then there's no way to get free. You can't escape from the cage until you know that there is a cage, and there is a cage for consciousness. The level of Satanism is being exposed for more people to see it. And the other thing is, I don't think it's just one group that's controlling us. I think that there are factions of evil, let's call them that are also vying for control.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative moments that shift our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Jummie Moses, spiritual seeker and metaphysical investigator, exploring the mysteries of existence. On the show today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Isabella Young. She is a survivor of a Messianic cult led by her ex-husband, a man later exposed as a pedophile and con man. After the tragic loss of her son, Isabella escaped and began a deep journey of healing, deprogramming, and spiritual awakening. She came to realize that the manipulation she endured was a reflection of a larger system of global control. Now she helps others recognize and break free from cult programming, narcissistic abuse, and fear-based mind control. Isabella is also the author of Putting on the Armor of God and New Human of New Earth, where she shares powerful tools for healing, empowerment, and conscious living. And moving forward, I will be addressing Isabella as Bella. Another disclaimer, really quickly, before we jump into today's conversation, is that we're going to be talking about moments of suicidal ideation, death, and sexual abuse. And there might be some cursing as well. So just wanted to give listeners a disclaimer. If you're listening with children, this is a good time to save it for later. With that being said, Bella, welcome to Shifting Dimensions. I'm really excited to speak with you today.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Jumi. I'm really excited for our conversation today. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my experiences with you and your audience. Thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to come on and talk about your story and just your overall thoughts on what you experienced and what we're experiencing collectively as a human race. So let's start with you, of course. I would love for you to kind of take us back in time into how you grew up and how you found yourself in a cult.
I grew up in a small country town in Victoria, Australia. And on the outside, my family looked pretty normal. My mother was a teacher, my dad was a vet, and we had the outward appearance of we had I had horse riding lessons and we had tennis lessons. So we were uh, looked pretty sort of well off, I suppose, on the outside, but behind closed doors, as is pretty typical, it was hell. My mother has or had, she's since passed, a narcissistic personality disorder, and she was an alcoholic. She was also an atheist. She was a very devout atheist, a militant atheist, and she raised my brothers and I to hate God and look down upon anyone who believed in God and even spoke the word. It was spat out with as much venom as possible. So when I do refer to higher power, which I know now is real, I will use the word God. Some people will use universe, great spirit, all that is, but I choose God because in my journey, it's been important for me to embrace that word with all the love that I have. So my mum blew up the family with an affair, an extremely ugly divorce, which I was like she used me as an emotional support. So really, it was a extremely toxic childhood. She triangulated my brothers and I. So we were, there was a lot of just fighting, verbal abuse. There was some physical fighting as well. And that sent me on a very dark trajectory out of the home. And I studied at university, and it was when I was doing that course, I studied outdoor education, physical education, and it was through those courses that I met the man who was to be my first husband. And he was actually a good man, really. I don't know how I managed to connect with him, but divine intervention, I'm sure. And we started a life together. And my dream was always to live on land and be as self-sufficient as possible with fruit trees, vegetable garden, chickens, and horses. And so he helped me to manifest that dream. And he was also working in the outdoor education field. He'd actually done 4 tours of Vietnam. He was the longest serving Australian soldier in the Vietnam War. He was a Green Beret, and he was with the SAS. So he was a real warrior in that sense, but he was also a spiritual warrior because he had his own awakening before he met me. He gave me books to read. We did courses together like Tantra and meditation. So he, through his influence, I opened up to there being a bigger picture, that there being more to life than what can be perceived through the five senses, and also that God is real. There is a higher power and that we can tune into and tap into and align with. So he went to work one day. He was running a company that was using outdoor adventure activities with corporations for team building, confidence building, communication strategies, and also for personal development. And that was his first big job with his new company. I got on the knock on the door about 10 o'clock in the morning from the local policeman and a neighbor to inform me that he'd been found dead in his car that morning. And I was 3 months pregnant with our second child, and our son was 3 years old at the time. And I just wanted to die at that point because I knew in that moment that sorry, comes up every now and again. I'm not going to apologize for my tears, but I knew that my dreams were over. You know, my best friend was dead. I was never going to have a family that I wanted. There was no way I could keep living on the farm. And so I started a journey to just try and find a reason to stay alive, which came down to the fact that I had children, and I couldn't do that to them. You know, they already lost their father. I had to stay. So then I had to find, a way through that just longing to exit and find something else to focus on. And that was my healing from my childhood wounds and also from the grief that I'd experienced. So I traveled around a lot. I spent time in India in a couple of different ashrams with different spiritual teachers. And there was also a spiritual transformation, like a center near where I lived. And I did a course there called Dying to Live. It was a shamanic course where we were preparing for our death. So we stayed blindfolded and in silence for the week, except when we were in a temple space. And then in that space, we wrote our will, we wrote letters of forgiveness, we wrote a eulogy, and we prepared for the death experience, which was like a guided meditation on the last morning of the retreat. And I had a huge out-of-body experience on that morning because I put my whole self into this course. I knew it was going to be a turning point for me because it was just perfectly timed. And in that experience, I was given some instructions, and one of them was to go and start training with this particular individual who I'd only heard of before. He was presenting himself as a trance channel. So he would go into a trance. And so he's an actor. Let's just get this out of the way. His name's Louis Dordompré. He's still running his cult, but at that time he was presenting as a trance channel. And like I said, he was an actor. So he's pretending to be Buddha and Mother Mary and garden gnomes and whatever else. And anyway, I was directed to go and start training with him. And I met him in New Zealand for a Millennium event. So that's 2000. And then he invited me to come to his ashram in Laguna Hills in California. So I brought my children. I don't. The first time I went there by myself and lived in the home and was basically the cook, the cleaner, the housekeeper, and whatever. And there were disciples, he calls them, who come around and serve him every day because his big lie is that he's the Messiah. He's the second coming. He's the Maitreya, the Kalki avatar. He's the one who's come to save humanity. So all of us were his disciples there to help him with his ministry. And all of that kind of made sense to me in a way because I did want to be serving, I did want to be serving humanity. I wanted to do something with my life and I wanted a guru. So, it felt like I was in the right place doing the right thing. It just, my lessons haven't, as with most of us, haven't always been beds of roses. So I stayed there for the month, and at the end of the month, we did a retreat to Sedona. And at the end of that retreat, in front of a group of people, he had me come up in front of the group, face the setting sun, and he asked me to cast my deepest wish into the setting sun, which is to serve God. That's my dedication of my life, is to be in service to God. And when I turned around, he was down on one knee, or rose petals scattered and bubbles being blown, and he asked me to marry him. So I felt that was the next step for me. So I said yes. I went back to Australia, brought my kids, my children, my older two, over to the States. And it wasn't long after that I got pregnant and had a child with him. And then we started living in the ashram, spoiler alert, / cult. And life was hell. It was absolute hell because he controlled everything. He controlled, when we're supposed to get up, what we're supposed to eat, what we're supposed to do with our time, our free, everything was supposed to be devoted to serving him, whether that's from cleaning bathrooms or writing, advertising material to get more cult members in. We had so many meetings that would go really late where people would be airing their their issues and their wounds, and people would end up in tears and crying and screaming. And it was that children were often there too. So it was awful. But I felt, and he would tell me, you're so wounded. That's why your life is so hellish. And I knew I was wounded. That made, I knew that I didn't really love myself. I felt so guilty, and these were issues that needed healing. So I stuck it out. And then 7 years along the timeline, my son, who was 15 at the time, came home from school one day. He was really upset and he didn't want to talk about it. So I said, why don't you go to bed? We'll talk about it in the morning. And in the morning, he was gone, which was raised the alarm bells. And then by the end of the afternoon, we'd called around to all his friends, couldn't find him. He was supposed to be going away. So it was extremely alarming that he wasn't home. Reported him missing. And the next day, the cult leader sent his assistant out to look for him. And behind the house, we had a cleared area where those electric towers are. And this assistant found my son with a lethal neck wound and the kitchen knife by his body. And that whole, my son's death was then blamed on me. That was because I wasn't obedient disciple. I wasn't giving my son the life he wanted. And so he'd taken his life to get out of this hell that I was creating. And once again, I was really, didn't even want to breathe. I spent 6 months just basically going from breath to breath. And I've got children, so I don't want to burden them. So I went to I knew I needed help, and I knew a psychologist wouldn't really be able to help me because was not really, it needed to have more of a spiritual aspect to understand really where I was coming from. So I went to see this guy who'd been the cult counselor, but he'd since stopped being in that role because he saw through the cult leader. But I went to see him. I walked in the door and he said, I knew you'd come and see me. You know you're in a cult, don't you? And I said, no, I don't know I'm in a cult. I thought I was in an ashram with my guru. And he said, go home and Google cult characteristics. So I went home, and sure enough, there's the charismatic leader who's the arbitrator of truth, who controls everybody's time, sleep, what they eat, who they're in relationship with, whether they're having sex or not, and just and controls what information's coming in. So we weren't supposed to read other books or except the ones that he recommended. Uh, and our time was all taken up with cult related tasks. Sleep was limited, supposed to get up at 4 a.m. and chant to him, chant his name, and then meditate for hours. Ridiculous. And then of course there's just all the other mind fuckery that goes along with it, the gaslighting, where he'd say that we'd had conversations we'd never had, or that I'd said something that I never said. Just and that the point of gaslighting is it comes from a play, a stage play, is behaviors that make another person lose their sense of self, lose trust in themselves, feel like they're going crazy, and basically not be able to think clearly or critically. So I was well down that into that state. Had been gaslit for years, and but I knew that I was in a cult, and I knew I had to get out. And I didn't. There was none over all that time. No one had said to me that you're in a cult, even though I found out my parents had been, even though they were divorced, had gone along together to see a cult expert in Australia. God knows what he told them, but no one said anything to me. No one mentioned that word. And whenever it came up in the cult, it was always laughed at, like we're the cult that's not a cult. All those other, everyone else is in cults, but we're not. So anyway, there was me in the cult, and he doubled down on his torture. Really, he wasn't going to let me move within 2 hours of the cult headquarters because we shared a child, and that was actually the law, that I couldn't take the child out of state, obviously, but I think within a certain amount of driving distance. And he also, this is the one that he used on the deepest level. He said that we journeyed together for lifetimes to come together to do this work, to be like modeling a divine family and change the course of the human evolution or some bullshit. So I understood that whatever issues I had, I would be taking them anywhere else, or that I thought I had been thinking, well, I just should stay here and work through them all. But at this point, I knew I had to get out because I really was going to take my life, and I think that's why he let me go. He eventually let me go, and beyond, I have family in Australia, obviously, but I wasn't going to go back there. He agreed to let me go to Hawaii, and that's where I came to with my daughters, and that's when my healing started. That's when I started to understand what it was about me that got me into that situation, because I studied narcissistic personality disorder, and it's all well and good to poke the finger at someone else and call them a narcissist, but what does it mean about me? What made me vulnerable to being in a relationship with someone with a narcissistic personality disorder? And so I understood that both those conditions are as a result of lack of self-love. They just manifest differently. A narcissist will create a whole false persona and just continue to run a stack of lies to get the energy, the attention, the approval from other people. Whereas I looked outside myself for that from other people. And I knew that the remedy was to establish self-love. And that took years. That took a long time. And I knew finally when I was loving myself, because I didn't attract someone else with a narcissistic personality disorder. And that was my main work at the start, was to heal that lack of self-love. And then after that came like deeper healing with through my connections with nature. But I'll just stop there because I've been going for a while.
No, thank you for kind of breaking down your story thoroughly. That was really important. And I'm sorry that you had to experience all of that. I have a couple follow-up questions, but I want to start off with the part where you said that you were having an out-of-body experience, and that's when you got the insight to reach out or go seek out this cult leader, right? Who marketed himself as a trans channel. So, can you kind of talk about that a little bit? Because When I think about out of body experiences, of course, they're mystical experiences. And in those states, we get intuitive insight, we get information. So I'm curious to know, how did you receive that information to go and speak with this person who ended up creating hell for you for a few years?
So the activity itself, where I had the out of body experience, was a guided meditation. So we were taken through the establishing our antakarana, which is the like an energetic vessel that we all have that we can use to travel anywhere throughout space and time and anywhere. So then we established that, and then we went traveled out through the um space, I suppose. It's hard to explain, but it's all inward. So anyway, there was I remember feeling like I was moving through galaxies and stars. And then I saw in my mind's eye my first husband, Barry, and I saw the spiritual teacher in India who I'd met, and Sai Baba, and another being who I don't recognize, don't know. And I heard them speak. Well, I suppose it was telepathically speak to me and tell me that it's time to start training with this individual.
Okay,
And
thank you.
it's not, there were other things that I heard, but there are things that I was told not to speak about. So I
Okay.
couldn't speak about those. And I just, since we're on this, it was an absolutely, literally, like obliterating experience. So much so that when I came back, I was only barely embodied. And took me 4 days to like coalesce back into my body. It was a very profound experience. But the main information I got from that was to go and start training with this individual. And as much as I could be like judging myself from that I heard wrong or I was misdirected, I know that I was directed to go on a path that was ultimately for my spiritual growth and evolution. And it's even, I mean, I know I'm responsible in whatever part from my son's murder. It's all been part of my growth and evolution, which sounds horribly selfish, but that's been my priority well, really since my early 20s. So
Okay, thank you for sharing that, because that's kind of what I wanted to get to the root of, where, have you asked yourself like why you would receive such a guidance if it would lead you into a situation that didn't appear to seem that way on face value, but lead you into a situation where you would, suffer and end up losing your son. So you kind of saying that it was part of your spiritual path, spiritual evolution. I guess that's the answer. So I kind of wanted to touch on that because I found that very, very fascinating. Another part that you touched about was just thinking about yourself and your psychology and what would put you in a situation where you would be drawn into a cult without even realizing that you were drawn into a cult. So you talked about needing validation outside of yourself, which was in direct, I guess, energetic resonance with a narcissist who, was obsessed with like, receiving praise and creating conditions where people would like worship them, right? Are there other reasons why people would find themselves in a cult-like situation? Because I know you work with people who are in cults and you work to get them out of it. Do you find that sometimes that they're looking for direction and some sort of stability in life? Because life can feel very unstable sometimes.
yeah, I think it's as simple as wanting to belong and wanting to help others. I mean, from my experience, the people who were in the cult with me, they're all really good people. It's just it's the emotional wounding that sets one up for being in a cult. It's lack of self-love, lack of trusting in oneself, and it's just that simple. They can because cults. This is the thing about cults and belonging in cults. Cults aren't necessarily just a church cult or a spiritual cult. There's also cults that are political parties and sports teams and multi-level marketing groups. And I even spoke to someone the way that the World Championship Wrestling works, it's sort of cult-like behavior. And families can act as cults. I know because my family was my first cult. And also there can be the cult-like behaviors within partnership, where one person's the cult leader and the other person's the in the cult. So for me, it's just basically having a lack of self-love, not feeling like we all want to belong. We're animals, we're divine beings, but we have these animal bodies and these animal instincts, and that's to really be in a group and be loved and give love and support other people. This is my human nature is good. It's primarily good. It's just that we've been this we'll probably get into this later, but we've been manipulated to be other than that, or to believe that we're other than that. And
Yeah. Yeah,
and
sorry, go ahead.
I just, and also I don't work with anyone from cults. I'm in communication with people who escaped the cult I was in, but people were so damaged by this cult, especially the men, because a lot of the men were convinced that they're gay. That was his thing. Let's explore your sexuality. So behind the scenes, he's having sex with all the male cult members, breaking up marriages. I was in a celibate marriage because he wouldn't have sex with me. He told me all these different reasons why not, which I'm really grateful for in the end. But just after that one time when I conceived, he never touched me again for the entire relationship, because either I was too needy, too much like a man. Celibacy was for my highest good, So the people who were in the cult, especially the men, like I said, who got extremely damaged, they got mind raped and they also got raped. So I haven't been able to. There's only one other woman really who's helping me speak out about this particular individual, and everyone else is still in trauma. Well, it's only been a couple of years that I've been speaking out about it, because it took me 15 years to get to the point where I understood what was happening and even pieced together. Like, I didn't know that he was grooming my son. I didn't know that he was raping the other boys in the cult. All this information came out later. So I really didn't know what he was up to behind the scenes. He was stealing money from people and, just doing a lot of illegal and nefarious stuff. And that's only become apparent as time's gone on and people are speaking out about it.
Well, you're definitely brave for speaking out about it. And I can't imagine the level of trauma that you had to endure, especially finding out years later that, your son was abused, um, and also losing your son in that cult. That's a lot. So you said that once you escaped the cult, you went to Hawaii, and that's when your real healing started. So how exactly did you heal? How did you kind of break the bondage that you were in mentally, because it's all in the mind? How did you break that? How did you kind of restore balance within yourself and find self-love and forgiveness?
So that's an ongoing process. Um, still have to work at that, especially the forgiveness and the guilt. It still comes up from time to time. So the main thing that I did to start with was to uh, understand more about those psychological conditions. So, like I said, understand about narcissistic personality disorder, understand about codependency, understand about cults, understand about cult leaders' tactics. And so I've done a lot of research. I've watched a lot of stories about all different cult leaders, and just, to understand intellectually what happened. That was an important part of my healing. And the other equally important part was to spend time in nature and connect with nature. And that's been the main source of my healing, really. So I haven't worn shoes for about 8 years, except when I've got to, go walk on roads and all that sort of stuff. But I stay directly connected to the earth, skin to earth, because in that way I can receive whatever it is I need from the earth. The earth is a giant battery. It helps us rebalance electromagnetically, physiologically, energetically, and that helped calm my nervous system, because I was I was a mess. So spending time bare feet on the earth, walking in the sand, lying on the grass, touching trees, just being out in nature really helped to calm my nervous system. And then I learn about sun gazing, which unfortunately is trivialized as some sort of like hippie woo-woo stuff, but it's actually one of the most powerful practices that anyone can do and really should be doing, at least every morning when the sun comes up, if you can. Receive the light of the sun directly into the eyes and through to the pineal gland, the pituitary gland. And that, I cannot explain how that works, but it does. It's expanded my consciousness, and it's transformed my experience of life from one that was just constant suffering to now I don't suffer all the time now. Sometimes emotions come up and I feel intense grief or intense rage or whatever it is, but I don't suffer anymore. And I know it's from the light, because the light's key. And the sun is the highest form of light that's available to us. And so as much as I can, I avail myself of that. I now sun gaze at all different times of the day. I receive also I moon gaze, star gaze. I receive the light that comes through. I've got hanging crystal prisms here, so I receive that light. And I know that light is life optimizing information. And so that's going to be optimizing my consciousness, my physicality, and my being. And that has been the most. I wish I'd known this earlier. I wish I'd started off sun gazing from childhood. I think I'd be in a far different situation now. But that would be my best advice for how to transform one's life experiences. Start sun gazing and embodying that sunlight directly. It can also, even if because our skull's porous, that sunlight can go through into the brain that way too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sunlight directly in eyes, but it really is important to do. The fact is that sun has been vilified for a reason. People are scared of the sun. It's going to cause cancer. It's going to cause blindness. No, it will. If you go out and stare at the sun at noon, you probably will receive some damage, but that's not the point. Don't look at the sun because it causes blindness is only part of the sentence. It should be don't look at the sun, it causes blindness if you stare straight up at noon. But it's important to be getting that sunlight directly in your eyes in the early morning or at sunset. It's vital.
How long do you
In fact,
stare? How long do you look
well,
up at the sun?
I started off just about 3 to 5 seconds. If it hurts, stop. It's not that no pain, no gain thing, but just like really gently through softly closed lids. You just like to start off with, just like staring through your partially closed lashes. Just start with that, just a few seconds, and then build from there. Build
So,
up to 5, 10 seconds,
mhm.
and yeah.
Okay, just to make sure the listeners are clear, um, Bella is not talking about staring into the sun when the sun is like at its brightest, like at
Then
noon.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
talking about early morning when the sun is still,
Sunrise,
sunrise, and then you're talking
dawn,
about around sunset time too.
sunset. Yeah.
Okay.
When it's close to the horizon, it's safe to look directly into the sun for as long as it doesn't hurt, which might be like a couple of seconds.
So does that activate our life force? What is the benefit outside of grounding? Because I have been getting intuitive insights to make more physical contact with the earth. I actually took a walk on Sunday, a very long walk, and after my walk, I took my shoes off and just planted my feet in the on the grass, on the soil for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. And I need to do that more often because I was feeling very unbalanced and I needed to ground. So that was the intuitive nudge to do that. But, with the sun gazing, which I'm very fascinated by, and I am going to try that outside of grounding, what does it do? Is it like, again, like, um, enhancing your life force, updating your DNA? What exactly are the benefits of it?
I don't know exactly. I don't understand the science of it. I just know from my experience that that's what gives me the energy, like the invigoration, the life force energy that it gives me, that I can feel it. And I also know that it expands my consciousness so that I can receive information from lots of different sources, whether they're physical or non-physical. I can also, it's expanded my consciousness so that I can collate a whole lot of information. So this is my latest book. It's called New Human of New Earth. It's 825 pages long. It's got 1,800 footnotes. And I know that through sun gazing, it enabled me to have the consciousness to do all that research, collate it all, and then present it in a book. And I also know that it is light that is upgrading my DNA, and I don't know how that works on a scientific level, but it is. That's what's the driving force behind my evolution at the moment is my connection with the light and the sun.
Thank you for sharing that.
Through the sun, because it's not just the sun, right? The sun is a portal. So there's the great central sun, and they're all, all through the cosmos. So the sun's just a portal. There's light really coming at us in all directions. It's just the sun is the focus of that light. And the light has changed in nature from, I don't know when it started, but we're now receiving the highest light frequencies that we've received in like recorded time. And that's measurable through the Schumann resonance, which is the vibratory frequency of the earth. It fluctuates, but it's measured in hertz. It used to be 7.83, but now it can fluctuate up to 50 or 80 or whatever. That's higher dimensional frequencies. Fifth dimensional frequencies are now more commonplace here. We're receiving them, and they can't be stopped. It's just that we're being misdirected, and we're being redirected. Sorry, we already said that, but we're being kept from that knowledge that we are now being bombarded by the highest light frequencies, the highest evolutionary forces that have been, come here for who knows how long. And that's something that that really would be good for most people to know, that we really need to be receiving those energies rather than staring at screens or basically just staring at screens, but just go outside and avail ourselves of the energies out there. So good for you that you did go on the walk and then put your feet on the grass. It's so essential, because there's no way we can be optimally mentally or physically healthy without a direct connection to the earth, without the energies from the solar system or the earth. We need those. Our bodies need those to be functioning optimally.
Yeah. So, it's so interesting that certain things are villainized, especially the sun. You're right. It's always like,
Yeah.
put on sunscreen. And I'm not saying don't put on sunscreen, but this like fear of the sun and how it can cause cancer and all of these different things. But there's also an argument for go out into nature, right? A lot of people say that go out into nature, touch grass, get fresh air. And it's interesting how, there's a part of our collective consciousness that realizes the importance of being outside, being in nature. And then there's another part where we're kind of programmed to be afraid of nature in a sense, or afraid of the sun, for example, which is part of our life force energy, having that direct connection to the sun. Okay, now I want to talk about your
Can
book.
I just say, one thing about that?
Yes.
We have been intentionally made to fear the sun, to keep us sick and suffering and fearful and controllable. That's intentional, all that information, because the sun is life force energy. We have to have the sun on our skin for many reasons, other than, people hear about the sun and vitamin D. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. It's called vitamin D, but it's actually a hormone that's like the precursor for 200 other hormones. We have to have the sun on our skin. And this whole idea of putting sunscreen on and covering up, it's all well and good if you're, picking fruit or vegetables all day. You don't want to be frying yourself, but there has to be times when it's no sunscreen, direct sun on your skin, and don't be going inside and having a shower straight away, because it takes time for the body to start manufacturing vitamin D with the sunlight. And the other thing that I didn't mention before about how I know that the light frequencies are increasing is not just this human resonance, but the number of the solar activity that's happening at the moment. So the sun puts off flares and plasma clouds and solar tsunamis and all that, but and they're increasing in a way that is astronomical now. So the sort of solar activity is that we would have seen in, say, a 6 month period is now happening in 1 month, and the intensity of the flares is increasing too. So they've got X, C, and M class flares, and there are more of the higher intensity flares coming off. So there's more solar activity, more light, more energy coming from the sun, and the more we can avail ourselves of that energy, really the better. And the thing is about it, when we're aligned with the nature, when we're directly connected to nature, then any of these planetary changes that are happening, which they are, we're at a turning point now. There's a number of, like this, for instance, the Hindu tradition studies the cycle, not studies, but talks about the cycles of time. They're called yugas. They're like, there's all different divinations of time, but the yugas are about 24,000 years long. And we've just come out of a yuga called the Kali Yuga, which is basically of darkness, where people are disconnected from God. And we're now on the upswing, where people are going to start reconnecting with their higher power and with each other and with nature. So that's where we are. That's where we are. And that's why, even if it looks like the world's going to shit and a lot of bad things happening, that's because of the light. The light's now showing what was hidden in the darkness, what was lurking in the shadows. And that light intensity cannot be diminished. So even though it looks as it does, at some point or over a certain period of time, those forces of darkness will no longer be able to exist on this planet. The light frequency that comes from external sources, but also from each one of us as we offer a higher vibration, that the light frequency of the planet will no longer be able to, those dark forces won't be able to exist. There will be no food sources for them, so that's how I see it.
And I think that's how a lot of people are seeing it. And something that you're passionate about talking about is the fact that, you being in a cult, you getting out of a cult kind of put you into the understanding, or led you to the understanding, that the human race is part of a global cult, right? And you talked about a lot of things that were done in the dark now coming into the light. And we're seeing that, you know, from all different fronts, right? We're seeing that in Hollywood, we're seeing that in politics, we're seeing that in the spiritual communities, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about that particular subject matter of the idea that we potentially are part of a global cult, right? And how did you get that knowing? Did you research it? Was it an intuitive hit? And what is the extent of this global cult that you're talking about here?
It was a understanding that humanity is enslaved in a satanic cult was something that uh, it dawned on me through doing research. Like, I remember learning about 9/11 and then thinking, what the, actually doing the research and realizing that this is not what it's been presented as. And then and then from there realizing, hey, what is being presented through mainstream media and through governments and all that is really, there's something else going on here. And through my experience of being in the cult, I was able to understand things like gaslighting. So that's, like what the mainstream media does with presenting different opinions and different like lies and things like that people are expected to believe. And the other one that the other word that I understood after 9/11 was PSYOP, which is psychological operation. And that's basically an event that is planned and orchestrated so that what's happening on a larger scale now, so that human rights and freedoms are being reduced by every one of these psyops that come in. And also what happens is a whole lot of other stuff that comes in with the psyops. People are made to participate in basically like life-threatening medical procedures through fear and control. So I was able to just start seeing, oh, televisions are one of the most powerful mind control devices that have ever been invented. Now we've got the cell phone, so I could see how that the mind control was being done through these technologies, through films, and the whole Hollywood thing, and through, like I said, cell phone, video games. All these screen technologies really serve to limit human consciousness, control human consciousness, and keep people in fear. And people who are in fear are controllable. And when that happened, like when I started realizing, wait a minute, everything I believed in is a lie, is a trap. All these systems, all the religions, all the monetary system, the legal system, the education system, the science, and the judicial system, how they all work together to keep us enslaved in a debt system. So we're educated through schools, educated. No, we're brainwashed through the education system to believe that this is how it should be. That we should have 9 to 5 jobs where we only have like the weekends off to think straight. It's just the whole system is designed to keep people serving and this is the thing. I don't know who they are, whoever they are, that it's doing the enslavement of humanity. I'm pretty sure that they're non-human, anti-human, subhumans, and they have their minions, and their minions are whoever we can see now in the world has power and control, followers, and fortune. So they're just the minions, whoever's in charge of this control system. But they know what's happening, that the light is weakening their control and their days are numbered. So they're basically just like trashing the joint before they leave, because they know that they soon will have no place here at least on this earth where I am.
Okay, I'm glad that you touched on that because when I was going to say, when you talk about satanic cults, are they people? Are they entities? Are they, extraterrestrials? So you kind of talked about they could be a mix of all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, but then what is the purpose of the control? What is the purpose of the enslavement, quote unquote?
To feed off our energy and use our creative forces for their own, um, for themselves. So whoever they are, that they have no connection they've lost their connection to source. So they use our life force energy to feed themselves, so that they have that continuation of existence. They also have no creative power. They have to use uh, our creative powers to manifest their world. And you can see what's happening through the fact that there's so much violence on the screens, on the movies, so people are taking, because we create with our thoughts. Thoughts are energy, and we can manifest reality. And I think we're so unaware of what we really can do, but basically we create with our thoughts. So what's been happening is our thoughts and our emotions are being hijacked, so that now we're, thinking, the worst, and, like the end of the world, and, financial collapse or world stuff, those ideas are fed to us. And so that they manifest out in the world, and also people are living in fear, and whoever they are, they feed off all those vibrational energies of fear, suffering, pain, loneliness, and those emotions are all being intentionally generated, all day, every day, so that there's food or energy supply for whoever they are. And that the level of Satanism is being exposed for more people to see it. And the other thing is, I don't think it's just one group that's controlling us. I think that there are factions of evil, let's call them that are also vying for control. Yeah, it's hopefully at some point I would like to have a clearer understanding of how the control systems work. I know a lot of people have done maps, and it's a pyramid power structure with the controllers at the top, and then you've got different layers down until we get to us down here at the bottom, and where basically the food supply, the energy supply.
So
And also the other thing is, I just want to say that there's no way to get out of a cult or get out of an enslavement situation until you know that that's what situation you're in. Because I didn't know I was in a cult, so I couldn't really like get out until I understood my predicament, and that's true also for any individual. Until we understand where we are and what systems of control are operating beyond our, well, really, our current knowledge, then there's no way to get free. You can't escape from the cage until you know that there is a cage, and there is a cage for consciousness.
yeah, and that's why I think when people talk about awakening, this is part of what they're talking about,
Definitely.
waking up to the reality of what's going on in the world. But what you're saying is fascinating, and I have heard this line of thinking before in terms of us being controlled by entities that are feeding off of our energy. And some people call those entities archons. So I have heard of what you're talking about. This isn't new information to me necessarily, but I think what's fascinating is you found this information through research and also through, I guess, intuitive knowings as well.
Mhm.
And then you wrote your book, New Beginnings, New Earth, over 800 pages. So what exactly what was your intention in writing the book? And people talk about this concept of a new earth. And let me know if this question becomes too convoluted, right? So one, I want to know why you decided to write the book. And then the second thing I want to touch on is the fact that you're talking about a new earth in your book. And when people talk about this whole thing about, control, they also talk about the fact that this is a simulation. This is like almost kind of like a prison planet, right? Like everything's fake. It's not the real Earth. So is that what you're talking about as well in your book? And let me know if you want me to expand or clarify anything I just asked.
So the title's New Human of New Earth, and it's basically a remembrance of how to be human, because that's being rapidly forgotten, because most people are now relating to life through screens, and that's about the most disempowering thing a human being can do. And in fact, all screen technologies, I'm going to go out on a limb, are part of the control system. On some level, they've all been introduced to us. It's not like the latest technology or whatever, but these are all specific technologies that are introduced to basically, be the word, like, it cut off us from our divinity and our humanity, really. We end up being some roboticized, like, I don't even know what. So I wrote the book, including all the like medicines, natural medicines that are in nature, also our body technologies and spiritual technologies that, not all of them, sorry, many of them that are available that have been forgotten or trivialized, ignored, or looked over, that are important for us. How we use our voice, how we, exercise, how we move, what we eat, just all the things that we can do to stay as human as possible, and also to be as divine as possible. So that's really why I started writing the book. But then then the information that came in was to make people aware of the situation that we're in, that there is a cage for consciousness. There are psyops being run. The government is not your friend. Most of the medical practices, medical doctors are sponsored by Big Pharma, and they have their loyalty to Big Pharma, and they are not your friends. And that's not to say that there's no time when pharmaceutical drugs or surgeries or whatever are inappropriate, but to be living life using pharmaceutical drugs as your primary healthcare agent is not going to end well. Our bodies are designed to receive natural medicines, and when anything synthetic is taken into the body, it's received as like almost like an enemy. So that can often cause inflammation, which is one of the main underpinnings for a lot of the chronic diseases that we see. And there's so much to go into on that, but that's what I've done in the books, just explain how how we can be as empowered and as like grounded and healthy as we can, because we are under attack, and we this is a war. And people talk about the third world war and when that's going to start. Well, it's already started. Our consciousness is under attack, our bodies, our physical health's under attack. The processed food it's all weaponry. And people think, oh, it's just junk food. No, it's toxic poisons that when you take that into your body, the body is poisoned, whether it's all the sodas or alcohol or whatever. There's so many things that are advertised now, people that think is just ordinary part of life, but they're actually weaponry that's being used against us. There's all the frequency wars. So the way that music is now being twisted so that there's a different tuning frequency that actually creates agitation and violence. So there's all these ways that we are under attack. The fact that people wear shoes all the time and don't connect with the earth, or they live in cities, cities are a cancerous blight on the earth, and not good things happen in cities for most people because people are disconnected from nature, and we have to be connected to nature. You have to take time out to go and connect with nature, even if that's just opening your window and watching clouds go by for a while. There are many ways to connect with nature that if you can't get outside for whatever reason, bring plants inside, play sounds of nature, the rain or the ocean sounds or a bubbling brook or birds chirping or whatever, that the importance of being connected to nature cannot be underestimated. And so that's really what I'm emphasizing through the book.
Thank you for sharing that. And like I said before, there definitely these things I have heard, right? And it's very obvious that there's a war on our health. If nothing else, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I
Okay,
was just
okay.
remembering, I forgot part of your question, but
Yeah, yeah,
please go.
and I was gonna like remind you of it.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say everything that you're saying I've heard before, and if nothing else, right, just thinking about the fact that, thinking about the types of food that we ingest and that's made available to us, it's very obvious that there's a war on our health, right? If people are listening and they're not resonating with anything else that you're saying, I mean, that part is just that's so obvious right now. It doesn't matter what your belief systems are, if give into what people might consider conspiracy theories or not, because somebody could be listening to this and feeling like, oh, these are all conspiracy theories. But again, if you look at our health system, our food and everything, I mean, our food and what we ingest is a direct pipeline into the hospital. It's a direct pipeline into us taking more medication and making these pharmaceutical companies richer. But okay, just kind of want to double back on the second part of my question, which is, what is that new earth piece that you're talking about?
Feels to me like the new earth is where we are going. We are going to be free from enslavement, and we will be living in a new earth, and it is up to us to create that. And we do that every day with every thought we have, every word we speak, every choice we make. We can already live in a new earth by being a kind, compassionate, helpful, honest, integrous human being, because that's the human being of the new earth. And also the other part of that is to hold a vision that that's what we are going to be as a whole experiencing. So we're using our thoughts to create that reality of new earth. So for me, it's somewhere we're going, but also somewhere, like I said, that we can inhabit right now, and that's what I'm choosing to do.
So is it a mental dimension, the new earth? Because I hear people talk about that where you can experience heaven on earth right now.
Yeah, but it's also physical too,
Mm.
and I think that's the what I've heard is that this shift that we're going through from a lower vibrational state of control and fear and sickness, we're going into a higher vibratory state of freedom and love and egalitarianism. And this transition has happened in other places at other times before, but it's been a consciousness shift. But this time here on Earth, it's including physicality. So we're physically embodied through these changes. And that's why my recommendation is to be connected as much as possible, as long as possible, every day to nature, so that that transition is organic. Because then our bodies are part of, aligned with nature. So any changes are more easily experienced. Because I know there are a lot of people who are going through this time and experiencing all sorts of different physical symptoms as a result of consciousness shifts. And those physical symptoms can be alleviated, or if not, totally eliminated, by having a regular practice and connection to nature. Especially if you live in the city, it's really important to get out and get connected to nature and spend as much time away from screens, being as human as possible, just doing human stuff, whether that's, I don't know, cooking, playing with pets, playing with children, just be human, because this isn't a natural thing for humans to be relating to life through screens, because we'd normally be relating to life through nature, looking for signs and listening to the symphonies and of sounds that come through the natural world rather than through computer speakers. So
Well,
uh,
you talked about the symptoms of a shift in consciousness. So, what are those symptoms for people who are listening?
well, for me, those experiences, I get headaches. Some people feel ungrounded, so um, there's also that sleep's disturbed, um, brain fog, confusion, and then there's all emotions might come up. Especially has to be acknowledged for those people who are coming to this understanding that there is a bigger picture, that we are being lied to, that we are being enslaved and controlled. There's grief that comes with that understanding that one's worldview is no longer appropriate. So that has to be taken into account. Some people's worlds do fall apart, and then in some way it's kind of necessary for a new worldview to be built up, so that there can be depression and anger and hopelessness. All those feelings can come up as we realize that the world that we knew, that we were taught to believe was real, is not that at all. And I don't necessarily buy into this whole thing. Like I get that it could be a simulation, but for me right now in this body, which is my main thing that I've got, it's as real as it gets here for me. To just say, oh, it's not real, it kind of allows a dismissal of what's happening, and like a separation in a way. But for me, this is right now is as real as it gets. And I just want to say on the conspiracy theory thing, that is always, I just want to say that there's black magic involved here, and the word conspiracy theory has been like programmed to stop critical thinking. So and you just notice it, as soon as someone just throws back at any idea, or like anything that I say, or you conspiracy theorist, they stop critically thinking, and they will not examine any further like information. Even if it proves the truth, they will be able to dismiss it. And that conspiracy theory concept was term was introduced by the CIA after the Kennedy murder, to cover the fact that it wasn't what was being presented by the news. So they introduced into the zeitgeist conspiracy theory, and now people will throw that out, and it will stop people from actually examining the truth. And I've seen that happen again and again. It actually stops critical thinking.
Yeah, well, initially when the word came out, it wasn't intended to be used as a dismissal for new information or facts, right, that were brought to someone's attention or to the public's attention. But I think over time, the word was kind of distorted to do what you were just talking about, to kind of make people stop um, critically thinking or put shame in
Yeah,
people who consider this new evidence or new information. I mean, and everything that we talk about, I always tell people continue to question, continue to do your
yeah,
own research. You don't have to take every single thing here that we're talking about at face value, right? I call myself a metaphysical investigator, and I think about these things constantly. And like I told you, a lot of what you're saying, I've been hearing now for the last couple of months. And when I first heard it, of course, it puts fear in you. So for the listeners who are listening, you're like, what? We could be in a cult, a satanic cult could be controlling the world. We could be in a prison planet. Like there's so many different ways of, putting it. Even within Christianity, there are lots of Christians who believe that the devil, quote unquote, has dominion over the earth, right? So these things have been talked about in the zeitgeist for a while now throughout humanity. So, this isn't completely new information. But for those who are listening who feel kind of apprehensive and scared and like don't really want to consider this information, or feel kind of are starting to feel hopeless, what is the hope in all of this, right? How do we continue to live our lives without feeling overwhelmed and overthinking every single thing that we put into our mouth, overthinking every single time we pick up our phone to use it? How can we find that balance in knowing that there could be something nefarious going on here, but this is also like the world I live in, and I need to use my phone for work and I need to eat and I don't have time to always pick out the most organic things?
The best thing is to reduce the amount of like fearful information that's coming in. And so don't be constantly going down rabbit holes, because there are endless rabbit holes and they're specifically designed to keep you in them so that you're not participating in life as a human being. So know that the light is is the light is changing the situation here on earth, and it's up to us as to how quickly that happens, so that there is hope. So trust that there is a higher power that we are and that we can access in order to support us through this journey out of darkness, whether it's our own journey or as more of a collective. And then to be, like I said before, focusing on enjoying life as much as possible, rather than like worrying or arguing, because there are conspiracies, there are conspiracy theories, and there are conspiracy facts. So once one gets through the understanding that this bigger picture of enslavement, then for me the best thing I can do is just offer either a neutral vibration or a positive vibration into the collective, and that's the best thing that I can do. So I'm doing my best to contribute towards the freedom and future of humanity by simply being a good, honest, helpful person. And I think that's well, you're doing a lot more than that too. You got a platform where you're giving people an opportunity to share wisdom, and it's particularly healing for me. But you're also making a change on a larger scale, but not all of us are called to do that. So the best thing is to just check in with your intuition and listen, look for signs, listen for guidance, feel, and see what it is that you need to do, or that a person needs to do, to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And like I said, have faith that this is passing. This is all this hell that we're seeing will disintegrate and no longer be a part of life for those of us who choose to live in alignment with a higher power and to serve the greater good, to serve the common good.
Absolutely. Bella, thank you so much. This has been a very fascinating conversation, and there's so many layers to it. And I'm sure you're not going to be the last guest I speak with in relation to this idea of us kind of being controlled, and being part of a global cult. I actually have been going down a rabbit hole with David Icke's work,
Yeah.
recently looking into his book, The Reveal, which has really opened my mind up to so many different facets of life and just how this reality could be, you know, working. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge and where you are right now and your understanding of this reality. I really appreciate it. I have to ask, because I ask this to all my guests, have you shifted in perspective on anything recently? And it could be as lighthearted as you'd like it to be or as deep as you'd like it to be.
Where I've shifted most lately is being able to see examples in the world of where the light is shining into those dark corners, those shadows where evil has where evil's been running the show, and you mentioned it before. We can see the evil with the Diddy thing. We're getting people are now seeing these are he did satanic practices, satanic worship. We're seeing that on a scale. And of course, it's not just him, it's the whole Hollywood. Hollywood itself, the whole industry is a black magic tool to, I'm going to say it, mindfuck people. It just is. And then, I'm following a case at the moment where there's police corruption, judicial corruption, and that's being exposed for the world to see. It's completely apparent that there is corruption going along in law enforcement, and it's not like new news, but it's being exposed on a grander scale. We're seeing the corruption get exposed through like manipulation of the financial market. People are understanding more about how that's a tool that's being used against us, the whole, debt slave and stuff like that. So that's how I've changed in my perspective. I see, oh yeah, it really is. The light really is shining onto those areas that were once hidden. Because people would say, oh, things are hidden in plain sight. Well, now they're not, they're in plain sight and they're not so hidden. So that's how I'm seeing it. And I just also want to say that I want to emphasize what you say about doing your own research. Like, don't believe what I'm saying. It's really important to do your own research. Don't get overwhelmed by it though. But uh, that's there's so much information out there that can bust through those programmed ideas and beliefs about how life is. And it's really, I know it's scary and it takes a lot of courage, but it's really important if you are interested in your growth and evolution as a spiritual being to be open to greater truths. And yeah, they are scary. They can be terrifying, but you're an infant being. This life is just this life, and you're untouchable in that way. And emotions are just emotions. Just feel them, let them go. I've spent a lot of time, just crying when I find out what's happening. When you find out what the childhood jab schedule does to people, to children, it basically ensures that they'll never reach full potential. When you realize that, oh my God, that's just heartbreaking stuff. But it's really important to be open to the truth.
Absolutely, very important to be open to the truth and doing your own research and coming to
Yeah.
those conclusions yourself. And I also like the piece about, not being too bogged down by emotions. But this information isn't supposed to disempower you or put fear in you. I think the intention behind these conversations is to really empower people to understand what potentially could be going on with the world and our reality, because then it puts the power back in your hand, right? Like, when
Right.
you realize like, oh, this is what's happening, then you can start to detach, at least consciously within the mind, from a lot of these things that are set in place to kind of keep us down, keep us unawake, and keep us away from our center and our spirit, as human beings. So, just wanted to emphasize that as well.
Yeah, exactly. All the systems that are in place are to keep us disempowered. And it's only when we know how that's what they're doing that we can become empowered, and then to be extracting ourselves as much as possible from that. It's a matrix of control. I know David Icke talks about that too, like a perception deception. There are ways that we can like extract ourselves from that system. And the best way is to spend as much time away from screens and in the natural world, in my experience.
Yeah. Unless you're watching this
That's
episode or
right,
listen.
unless you want to watch some good podcasts.
Well, thank you again, Bella. It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you if they want to purchase your book or just learn more about the things that you talk about?
The best place is my website, which is feelingbetternaturally.love. I also have a YouTube channel, Feeling Better Naturally, and I have some talking heads videos, but a lot of just nature videos. Like I said, even if we aren't in nature, just by appreciating images from nature, even like the color green or whatever, a bunch of flower, that can be beneficial to in a lot of different ways. And I also have a Substack to Feeling Better Naturally.
Awesome. I'm going to leave all those links in the show notes. It's been a pleasure, Bella. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. I've really appreciated this discussion with you, and thank you for the work that you're doing to bring information to people that can help people on their journey. And that what a absolutely spectacular contribution to the freedom and future of humanity. So thank you.
Thank you.